Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, we had two wonderful reminders about the chosen ones and the stories about the prophets, as well as blasts from the past and the stories about the Sahabis. The trials and tribulations that they faced were far greater than ours, but by the grace of Allah, they prevailed. We hope you guys benefited from it, but guess what? We still have one more speaker, as Ahmed Udur mentioned before. Our next speaker we're going to call up is Mohamed Hussien. Mohamed Hussien was born and raised in Northern Virginia and spent most of his life in the DC metro area. He has studied abroad in Yemen and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Mohamed is a graduate from the College of Hadith at the Islamic University of Medina. He also holds a Bachelor of Science in Biology from George Mason University. Mohamed is the former youth director and assistant at Imam at Dar al-Noor Islamic Center. It's a Muslim Association of Virginia in Manassas, Virginia. Currently, he serves several local national Muslim organizations in various capacities as a teacher, volunteer, and board member. He's also the executive director of SAYF, the Somali American Youth Foundation. His brief topic that he'll be talking about is Who's Got Your Back? Inshallah, can we get Mohamed Hussien up?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا ما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It's good to be back here, back in Toronto, back on the other side of the border, back with all of you at Khalid bin Walid Masjid. This is, mashallah, a historic place and somewhere I've been coming probably for the last 20 or so years since I was a young child. My father, every time we'd come up to Toronto in the summers to come visit. Every time on our way out, we would pray Fajr at Khalid bin Walid and then get back in the car, head back to the States. So this place has a very special, especially has a very special place in my heart. And inshallah, as you heard in the few minutes that we have, I'd like to talk about a topic that titled Who's Got Your Back? And jokingly, when I was asked an hour or so ago for a creative topic title, because I think the last two topics had very catchy names, and I couldn't think of one right on the spot, so I just said, Raptors in 5, all right? But I think this Who's Got Your Back talks a little bit more to what I'd like to talk about with all of you today. And I wanted to talk about a hadith that I think is very relevant to all of us, and relevant especially to many of our young brothers and sisters. And it is a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ shared with one of his young companions, one of his family members, who would eventually become a great scholar. And this companion was Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So in the hadith that has been collected by Imam Ahmad and Imam al-Tirmidhi, the Prophet ﷺ said to Ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Abbas, Ya ghulam inni u'allimuka kalimat, احفظ الله يحفظك, احفظ الله تجده تجاهك, إذا سألت فاسأل الله, وإذا استعنت فاستعن بالله, واعلم أن الأمة لو اجتمعت على أن يضروك بشيء لم يضروك إلا بشيء قد كتبه الله عليك, وإن اجتمعت على أن ينفعوك بشيء لم ينفعوك إلا بشيء قد كتبه الله لك, رفعت الأقلام وجفت الصحف. In this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he is talking to Ibn Abbas and he says, Ya ghulam. And Ya ghulam is sort of a term of endearment. It's not just hey you or hey little kid, or ghulam kind of means kid, but it's used in a very endearing way. It's like, oh, oh young man, oh my son. It's very endearing. And it captures the attention of whoever you're speaking to about. So, and you'll find many of the scholars, many of our teachers, when we were in their homes and visiting with them and seeing them around their family, they will talk to their kids and even their students using very endearing words to sort of capture their attention. And it's less so "Wariakale" and more something, hey, come here, listen to what I have to say. And the Prophet ﷺ said, I am going to teach you a few words. Not something that's going to take forever, not something that's going to hold you here. I'm not going to hold you hostage here for an hour or an hour and a half, but I'm going to teach you a few words that you can take with you and benefit from for the rest of your life. And this is a gift that the Prophet ﷺ was given. He was given the ability of jawami' al-kalim. He was laconic in his speech. His speech was very comprehensive. And he would just be able to say a few words, and it would have a very vast meaning. Like the Shaykh Abu Rayyan, he mentioned, one of the hadith that he mentioned in his khutbah today was the hadith of Prophet ﷺ, an-nadum tawbah. It's 2 words. But it has a very powerful meaning, that regret or remorse is tawbah. So he said, احفظ الله يحفظك احفظ الله تجده تجاهك. He says, be mindful of Allah, and Allah will preserve you. احفظ الله. When you think about this word, when you think about the word hifz, a lot of times you think hifz, حافظ al-Quran, hifz, meaning protection. Allah is فَاللَّهُ خَيْرٌ حَافِظًا وَهُوَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. And you think to yourself, you say, what does it mean when the Prophet ﷺ says, احفظ الله? How do you protect Allah? You're not protecting Allah. What you're doing is you're being mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and protecting and preserving the commands that He has given you, the things that He has asked you to do, the things that He has made incumbent upon you. حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى. Preserve the prayers, and especially that middle prayer. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah. So you're mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by preserving His commandments and staying away from the things that He has prohibited, the things that He has made haram, the things which are unlawful. You do this by protecting the senses and the gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you from haram. You do this by protecting your eyes from looking at haram, viewing haram things. You do this by preserving your ears, by avoiding and staying away from things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made haram for us to listen to. You do this by safeguarding and preserving your body from the things that it ingests. You do this by not allowing yourself to earn haram and to feed yourself haram and to feed that haram to your family and to your community. You do this by protecting your mind. And this one is especially important. By protecting your mind from the things that you expose yourself to. Because for better or for worse, we live now in an age of information. Right? This is not the industrial age, this is the age of information. We have access to so much information. We can learn everything, every single thing that we want to know about is at our fingertips. You can teach yourself pretty much anything. You can read up on anything. You can get crash courses on anything. You can get a free education. But as many good things as there are out there, there's as many evil things to push against that. And if you allow your mind to be exposed to these things, and you allow your mind to be corrupted by these things, you are not following the advice of the Prophet ﷺ to his young companion, to this young scholar, where he says, احفظ الله يحفظك. Protect yourself by protecting your mind, protecting your eyes, protecting your ears, protecting all of your senses, not exposing yourself to haram so that you can preserve the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some of the greatest minds think that they can expose themselves to certain things and just be around certain ideologies day and night, and they think it's not going to corrupt the way that they think. We live in a day and an age where slowly but surely everything in society things in society that maybe even 5 or 10 years ago were not considered normal, were not considered things that that can be done in public, things that we discuss openly, things that are accepted by society now are accepted. And that line for what's considered, normal, it keeps moving. Year after year, month after month, week after week. And if you continue to expose yourself to certain ideologies, your mind will eventually become corrupted by these things. So I want to really emphasize that point. And especially for those whose understanding of Islam, especially the young ones whose understanding of Islam is not fully developed yet. Focus on building your aqeedah. Focus on building your understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Focus on building your understanding of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and his life. Focus on understanding these things before you expose yourself to all of these other things that are going to make you accepted to society and make you sound smart around your peers. احفظ الله يحفظك. And if you do this, if you strive to do this, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reciprocate. And nobody reciprocates like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرُكُمْ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِن تَنصُرُوا اللَّهَ يَنصُرْكُمْ. You have to take that first step. You have to take that first step towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember Allah and He will remember you. Give victory to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and He will give you victory. Preserve the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and He will preserve you. Nobody reciprocates like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many times we exchange things with our brothers and our sisters and people at work and people at school. You say, hey, do this for me and I'll get you back next week. Or do this for me, I'll do that for you. You exchange favors. Right? Take care of this for me and I'll do that for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not neglect or break His promises. You do for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you take that first step and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you double and triple what you did. احفظ الله يحفظك. You remember Allah, you preserve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He'll protect you. Some of the great worshippers of the past, they would get very old and they would still be very strong and their eyesight would be good. And people would ask them, how is it that you're at this advanced age and you still look strong, your eyesight is still good, you still hear very well? And they would respond and say, I protected all of these gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me when I was younger. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected them from me when I got older. Typically when your body starts to become weaker as you age, and your eyesight gets weaker, and you can't hear as good as you used to, you can't speak as well as you used to, your body, it's the sunnah of the Qur'an, it's the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's the way the world works. But if you preserve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's going to preserve you. Not only is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala going to preserve you, He's going to preserve your families. We know the story in Surah Al-Kahf with the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, in Al-Khidr. And when he's explaining to him why he did certain things, and he's telling him about the wall, he says, وَأَمَّا الْجِدَارُ فَكَانَ لِغُلَامَيْنِ يَتِيمَيْنِ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ وَكَانَ تَحْتَهُ كَنْزٌ لَهُمَا وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. The reason Khidr did good for them and protected their wealth, the wealth of these two orphans, was not because of anything that they did. They were too young to have really done anything. But it was because their father was a righteous man. If you do right by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will not only do right by you, but He will do right by your family as well. Some of the tabi'een, they used to say that, I prolong my prayer so I can protect my kids, so I can protect my children, taking a lesson from وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. That is احفظ الله يحفظك. You preserve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you'll find it in your life. You'll find that things in your life that are supposed to be difficult, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make those things easy. But you have to take that first step. You have to take that, make that cold wudu in the morning and try and make it to the masjid for Fajr. You have to try and, get in those voluntary fasts, especially now that we're in Sha'ban and we're preparing for Ramadan. You have to try and give some sadaqah even when it's difficult. The Shaykh was talking about earlier today, the verse, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَاءِ, giving in tough times and in times of ease. When you do this, then you'll find that, that big exam that you were worried about, that you thought, that you were stressing out about and you thought you were going to fail, you're going to look at it and you'll be like, these are, and I know every single person who's ever been a student has had this. You have that moment where you're like, man, I didn't study, but these are the exact things I studied. Right? And every student has had the opposite too, where you look at it and you're like, man, I studied everything but this. And it's those little things. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make those little things easy. Those little things that are supposed to be difficult in your life. You're headed for a big job interview, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy. We stress out over the wrong things. We worry about the wrong things, and that's the moral. One of the major lessons of this hadith is, because now they say our generation, assuming that most of the people in here are millennials, is the most stressed out generation, right? And what this hadith reminds us is that you take care of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of those little things for you. احفظ الله تجده تجاهك. When you preserve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you preserve His commandments, when you preserve His commands and you stay away from His prohibitions, and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will do for you is that He will not only be with you as He's with everyone in terms of His knowledge, with every single human being, but He will be with you in a way that He was with the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr when he says, لا تحزن إن الله معنا. Allah is with us. Allah is going to help us. Allah is going to give us victory. Allah is going to make this thing easy for us. إذا سألت فاسأل الله. When you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Doesn't mean you don't ask anybody else for help. It doesn't mean that you don't seek the assistance of those who are in positions to influence and in positions to help you. But it's that you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first. And when you look at the verses in the Quran that are about Siyam in Surah Al-Baqarah, at the end of those verses, what do you have? وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is close. So when you ask, whenever something tough is going on in your life, you're dealing with some type of stress, you're dealing with some kind of difficulty, you're worried about something, you feel like something's not going right, it's not going as planned, then ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first. Make that a habit. Make it a habit to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first, and then go chase after everyone else. You get sick, you wake up in the morning, and you don't feel well, and you have a headache, and you're throwing up, and you're like, man, I have to get into the doctor, I have to go to the urgent care. Before you do that, just take a second and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, Allahumma shfini anta shafi la shifa illa shifa'uk shifa la yughadiru saqama. And then call the doctor. Perspective. So it's not to eliminate all of the different asbab that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in this world. Because all of these people who are in positions of power, who are in positions of influence, who are in positions of authority, who are able to help you in any way, they're only there because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put them there. So it's not like you're committing an act of disobedience or an act of shirk or something like this because you ask these people. It just means that you're not taking the right order. I'll give you a worldly example. If you have وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى, obviously, and to Allah is the greatest of examples. If you have access to, say, at your workplace, you have a special relationship with the CEO, and you need something really, really important to get done. But you're not that high up in the company. Are you going to go to your manager? No. Right? It doesn't make sense. What's the point of having a relationship with the CEO if you're not going to take advantage of it? What's the point of having a relationship with the dean of your university if you're not going to take advantage of it? What's the purpose of knowing, the principal at your school or the director of the board? Right? One of the directors, I'm sure the directors are in here. Right? If you're not going to take advantage of that. Right? So when you have access, we all have the same access to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why would we start anywhere else? إِذَا سَأَلْتَ فَاسْأَلِ اللَّهِ وَإِذَا اسْتَعَنْتَ فَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ. When you seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first. And remember that if everyone wants to help you, if everyone wants to do good for you, if everyone wants to see you succeed, if everyone thinks you're the best, if everyone wants, you to attain something, including yourself, including your family, including your friends, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want this for you, you're not going to get it. No matter what. No matter how hard you try, no matter how much you sacrifice, no matter how many Instagram followers you have, no matter who you think you are, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want something to happen for you, it is not going to happen. And on the flip side, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants something to happen for you, regardless of who's in your way, who may be an enemy to you, who wants to see you fail, who is plotting against you, you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on your side. The great scholars of Islam, they understood this. And they said the person who has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on their side, they have the team that never loses. And the guardian that never sleeps. That's who you have on your side. And the guide that will never lead you astray. This is what happens when you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your corner. But you have to cultivate that relationship and you have to take advantage of that relationship. In another narration, the Prophet ﷺ says, "Ta'arraf ila Allahi fi al-rakha ya'rifka fi al-shiddah." That remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the good times when things are going well. And don't just make it a lip service. Don't just say, Allah is great. All praise to the Most High. Allahu Akbar, Subhanallah. Don't make it just a lip service. Really think about what you're saying. Remember when things are going well for you. Things are going well for you. Things are going well for your family. You're in times of ease. Remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And don't be that person who only calls upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when things get difficult. Doesn't mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't answer you if that's the only time you call upon Him. But think about it again, bring it back down to our level. If you only call somebody when you have a problem, every time you call someone, you're like, "Hey man, can I borrow some money?" And then they don't hear from you for 6 months. And then you probably didn't even pay them back, and then you call them back again in 6 months like, "Hey man, how you doing? How's the family? How's the kids? Can I borrow some money?" And you don't call in to check in on them. Nothing. It's only when times get tough is when you call on that relationship. Our relationships with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should not be like this. It should be a relationship that we take advantage of when things are good as well. وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. You thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you show gratitude, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to increase you and give you even better than what you thought possible. Because you don't even know. You might think that things are going well for you. You might think, man, I'm on a hot streak, things are going well. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with just a little bit of shukr, things can go to even another level for you, a level that you didn't even think about. So remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in times of ease and in times of difficulty. وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ النَّصْرَ مَعَ الصَّبْرِ وَأَنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. And that victory comes with patience. Things don't happen overnight. And that with every difficulty comes ease. And nowadays, again, because of the way that we consume information, and especially for the younger generation, we consume information at a very rapid, at a very high pace. We have a high intake of news and all of these things that are going on around the world, that it leads many people to many different emotional states. And that's going back to the beginning of the hadith, that remember that what you ingest, and control what you ingest, because those things are going to become a part of you. Right? You scroll down a feed, and one second you see someone in your community who's won some kind of award, and then you're happy, and then you scroll down and you see some children being bombed in Syria, and then you scroll down, and then you can't even keep track of your emotions. You're like, well, I was happy a second ago, and then I was feeling bad for a second. Let me go find out why I felt sad. You can't even control your emotions because it's moving so fast. So preserve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the lesson here. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will preserve you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect you. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us all and to guide us all and to allow us to be from those who preserve that which He has, and to preserve all of us, and to make us from those who preserve His commandments. Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala a'lam wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathira. I think the Q&A is next.